Hey, this is Victor Antonio, and I want to share a story with you. And if you bear with me, I think it'll be worth your time. When I first started selling products in Latin America, I was invited to attend one of my company's first international sales retreats. This would be the first time attending for me. And I remember one day in particular where we had rented out a suite on the top floor of this luxurious hotel. The view of the ocean was spectacular. As I stood by the door, a young man came in. We'll call him Thomas. He barely acknowledged my presence, and I could tell he was looking for someone in particular. Now, after 15 minutes, while nursing a cold beverage and talking to one of my new distributors, I felt a tap on my shoulder. And I turned around and it was Thomas. Now, this time he introduced himself, extending his hand and saying, "I've been looking for you. Can we speak in private?" Now, Thomas wasn't much for words or socializing. He was all business. And the more I got to know him over the years, the more I accepted that fact that was his modus operandi. Now, I remember us both stepping outside on the balcony to talk. He immediately launched into this long story about how he needed my help because his business was struggling and he was losing market share to his closest competitor, who I later found out was his cousin. Now, let me take a step back for a moment and lay the story out. At the tender age of 18, Thomas was given $1 million by his father so that he could start his own business. This was part of the family tradition. Across town, his cousin, Louis, was also given $1 million by his father so he could start his own business. Interestingly enough, both decided that they were going to use their money and join the telecom business. And so they both went out and invested close to $500,000 on building their business, putting up a huge network in their country. Now, Louis bought a system that was, let's say, manufactured by Company A. Thomas was hoping to compete and bought a different system, and let's say he bought it from Company B. Now, within 6 months, both cousins were competing hot and heavy for subscribers. But it wasn't long that Thomas began to notice that the more subscribers he put on his system, the more the system would hang up and drop calls. After a couple of months of inconsistent service, Thomas started losing subscribers who were canceling their service and then signing up with his cousin. And this is why Thomas wanted to speak to me. You see, our company sold a similar system to what Thomas had purchased. Our system had the right technology and the system flexibility to address his problems. Thomas was hoping to find a way to swap out his existing one with what we offered. The problem? To swap it out, he would lose his initial investment and have to buy a new system that would cost him an additional $400,000 and some change. That was pretty much all the money he had left from his initial $1 million gift. As he told his story, I knew he was in a bad situation. I mentioned that I would help him redesign a new network architecture, and at the same time we could swap out his old system and replace it with ours. Now, Thomas was hesitant to move forward with any suggestion for two reasons. A, he was unwilling to use up the rest of his investment to buy another system. B, he wasn't 100% convinced that our system would work. In short, he didn't have the money or the confidence or faith that we could help him. Now, the following week, after returning from our international sales meeting, I laid out this scenario to my vice president, and I told him the situation, how this young man was stuck with a system that didn't work, and how he was hemorrhaging clients. Thomas essentially owned a white elephant, and he didn't know how to get rid of it. Now, my boss told me to walk away. He says, "Victor, just walk away," but I just couldn't. My boss refused to discount our system sufficiently to make the deal worthwhile or viable for Thomas, and he also refused to approve any type of long-term financing for him. I wanted to help, but I didn't have the authority to approve any action that would help Thomas out. Then one day, out of the blue, an idea hit me. What if I was able to find a buyer for his existing system, applying those earnings to the system we would sell him, and negotiate a win-win installation fee? In other words, find a buyer for his current system, use that money to buy the new system. My boss looked at me as if I had gone off the deep end. I told him I would probably find the reseller who would buy Thomas's system at a discounted price, of course. And reluctantly, my boss gave me the go-ahead to find a buyer and make this deal work. Now, it took a few months, but we did it. We found a buyer for the existing system who shared with me that the system would work well in their country because the population density was much lower than where we were currently at, and that made me feel better. So after selling the old system, redesigning a new network, we began to swap out the old system for Thomas as time to, ensure smooth transition went well. 3 months later, the new system was up and running. Clients barely noticed the switchover, and the system complaints from users was dropping dramatically. Now, Thomas wound up investing another $200,000 for our new system, and we applied the revenues from the sale of the old system to complete the deal. All in all, he still had $300,000 to market and run his business. Now, within 6 months of installing the system, Thomas was up and running again. Thomas was again competing on equal footing with his cousin. His business grew steady, and he was able to begin recouping his initial investment based on this arrangement. Now, there's 2 lessons here I want to emphasize. Lesson 1: my concern for Thomas was sincere. See, I felt bad that he had already sunk that much money into an initial system that wasn't working. But I also knew for us as a company to help him and ourselves in the process, we would have to find a win-win scenario that we could both live with. My conversations with Thomas were tough and direct from the start. And I let him know where he stood and what I could and could not do. I didn't make any promises I could not keep. See, clients need our help, but we also need to be direct. And sometimes you can demonstrate how much you care by simply being direct and honest. Don't tell the client what they want to hear. Tell them what they need to hear if you really want to help them. Never overpromise and keep expectations in check. That was lesson number 1. Lesson number 2. When I went back to management with my swap out idea, in other words, swap out the old system, sell it, and then reinvest it in a new system, they were resistant to the strategy and questioned why I was even wasting my time. See, although they suggested I walk away from this quote-unquote dead deal, I couldn't do it. Call it a salesman's hunch. The result? 3 years later, after the installation of the new system, Thomas became the clear front-runner in his country and began to expand his network across the country. What did that mean to us? That although we sold Thomas's first system with razor-thin margins, we quickly made up the difference with steady orders we were receiving as his business grew and his network expanded. 3 years later, we had an ROI north of 400%. That's a lot. Now, sometimes we have to be willing to risk a lot for what we believe and what's the right thing to do. See, if you care about your client and if you care about winning, then all you have to do is take the time to care about what is it that your client needs. Granted, you can't do it with every single client, but the best salespeople learn to look beyond the obvious and see things, i.e. opportunities where others might not. See, that's important. See the opportunities where other people don't. Other salespeople don't. Creating great client relationship begins with creating value for our clients and customers. You know this. Customers need help, and we as salespeople need to stop selling and start helping our clients find ways to solve their problems, not ours. In other words, sometimes we focus on meeting our quarterly quotas and we forget about our customers. In the end, it's never really about price when we sell. It's about creating meaningful value for our clients through innovative solutions, and that's what this story is all about. Now, here's a personal note. About a year later, after selling the system, everything was running well. Thomas and his father invited me out for dinner to say thank you. Now, after dinner, they presented me with a beautiful gold Switch watch by Chopard. Now, apparently, only so many of these watches were made every year. It's an expensive watch, and believe it or not, I still have it. I share this with you, highlighting that selling is much more than selling products or services. It's about helping people and their business achieve their goals. And once in a while, not always, a client will take the time and make the effort to show you how much they appreciate your efforts. Moments like these far exceed the value of a great watch. See, that's what selling is all about, those moments. And yes, just so you'll know, I did claim the watch and report to my supervisor. Just in case you were wondering, ethics above all is what makes or breaks a sales career. I hope you enjoyed the story. It is a true story. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. And at the end of the day, reminding you always, Victor Antonio telling you that selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care.
Manager can feel it. The difference between a motivated, value-driven sales team and one that's stuck in a rut. CEOs know the difference too. They can see it clearly in the profit and loss columns. The question is, how do you get your team to this elite level? Is there something extra you can do to break through the remaining resistance and equip them with the right mindset to grow your business? Yes, there is. But you're not going to do it with one of those cheesy inspirational speakers or some self-proclaimed guru. What you need is someone with a real business track record to deliver key insights in a captivating way, to give your team the right tools for selling in today's tough marketplace. Enter Victor Antonio, experienced executive, innovative thinker, compelling speaker. He's ready to deliver the message you need your people to hear. Not with a canned speech, but a customized, dynamic keynote designed to deliver results. Bring Victor Antonio to your next event before the competition does. Go to www.victorantonio.com for more information.